How do you install EG4's 12,000 XP off-grid inverter? Today I'm doing an unboxing. I'm going to show you how to install this inverter. We're going to commission it and test it. And if you want a special discount code for the next 30 days, use Taddy 100 at Signature Solar. You're watching Taddy Digest. I'm Tad. Let's get started. So here's the box that the 12K XP comes in. First thing I see is the template. Then we've got our expansion bolts. So if we're going to mount this on the side of a brick wall, concrete wall, and then we've got our lag bolts, and then we've got our mounting plate. We're going to need that. Our Wi-Fi dongle, and then we've got our two side brackets. So very nice packaging, nice piece of foam. Wow. We got our communication cables, and then this is our inverter. Pretty nice. Got a couple handles. If you've got two people, that's going to be easier for you to get this out of the box and to the location where you're going to mount it. If it's just you, just tip it up to where you can get a hold of it, and then we'll be able to take it to where we're going to mount it. So I'm going to mount it up here. I'm going to set my inverter against my box with my batteries. Let's look at the design, go over some of the specs. So it's much larger than the 6000 XP. We've got our display here. I like it. We've got two covers for these breakers, and there's a Phillips screw that you've got to remove before you can lift these covers up and actually be able to turn your breaker on and off. We got our smart load breaker, and our battery breaker. Then turn it to the side. I do see some noticeable differences here. We've got plates that can be removed with filters behind the plates that you can clean when it pulls air through the inverter to cool it. You've got these filters that will keep debris from getting inside, so this keeps the internal from being dirty. So that's nice. We got our place for our dongle here. We've got our EPS output switch. And then on the other side, we've got our fans. Down here, we've got our PV disconnect, so we can disconnect the PV. Then we've got our power switch, which actually turns on the inverter. Now, let's look at some of the specs. Then I'm going to remove this panel down here, show you what's inside, and we're going to mount this inverter. So looking at our specs, something that's really important is our AC nominal output. How much power can we expect to get out of this? 50 amps, and that's at 120, 240 volt, 50 amps, then 208, you got a little bit higher, so 57. Then up here are MPPTs, right here, max current, 35 amps. Short circuit current's 44, but you don't want to go over 35 for those two MPPT inputs. Then up here, max PV input voltage is 480. Now what do we need to actually make the inverter work? MPPT voltage range, 120. So if you've got over 120 volts PV voltage coming in, that's going to allow you to operate this inverter and maybe charge those batteries. Then if we move down, impressive max AC input power, 24,000 watts, max PV power, 24,000 watts, and then max AC charging power to battery, 12,000 watts. Max PV power, 12,000 watts. Really cool. I like this inverter. I like the fact that you can put up to 24K of PV into this. Really nice. 48 volt, so make sure you have 48 volt batteries. Just went over a few of the specs. Now we're going to go ahead and start the install. To access the breaker terminals and to be able to land your wires, you got to take off the bottom cover. Now there's a difference between the 6000 XP's bottom cover and the 12,000. The 6000 had a few screws on the bottom. Now we could not take it off if it was setting on something like this is, but thankfully they've changed the design and there are 4 screws, 2 on each side. So 2 screws on this side, they're Phillips screws, and then we've got 2 screws on this side. So now we should be able to just take that cover off. So now we can see everything. We can see our MPPTs. We can see where our grid and generator connection are. We can see where our load and our smart load breaker is. We can see where our terminal blocks are for our neutral, our potential earth, so our ground wire, and then we've got our battery breaker terminals. We've also got our section for our communications, so we can hook up our communication wire if we want to have batteries in parallel, or if we just have one battery and we're hooking up that battery to our communication spot inside our inverter. There is a manual. I removed that manual after I unboxed. I did not show you, but definitely adhere to the instructions in the manual. Your manual is your friend. We've got our mounting bracket, and you can see the arrow here. This is in the up position, and this is correct. It's gonna slide onto this bracket like so. Now, how do we know where to mount this bracket? Super simple. Get a marker, take your template, put it on the wall where you want your inverter. I'm probably gonna mount mine up like this. Also, you want it on a non-combustible surface. That's the reason I didn't just mount it on the wood. I mounted it on a piece of sheet metal that I cut to fit the inverter. So we're gonna take and line it up. I think that looks about right. Then we're gonna take our marker and we're just gonna put a mark in each hole here like this. I'm gonna pre-drill the holes to make it easier to sink these lag bolts. So I'm just gonna use this 5/16. 2, 3, 4. That should do it. Now I'm gonna switch out, use my 13mm socket, place my bracket where it's gonna go right here. Use a level if you want it to be perfect. And I'm gonna take my first bolt, put it right there. That's one bolt. Now that we've got our bracket mounted to the wall, I'm up here because this inverter is heavy and I don't want to hurt myself. So I'm going to grab the handles, I'm going to lift it up, I'm going to slide it down onto that bracket. And there it is, it's mounted. Now let's go ahead and connect those little side plates. These are our little L brackets. We mount one on each side. We're going to use these 2 Phillips screws and then this lag bolt. I'll show you how to do it. So we're going to take and put this plate right here, and then you can see where the 2 screw holes are. We're going to take one screw and we're going to place it here, and then we're going to put the other screw right here like that, and that's our 2 screws into the inverter that hold that L bracket. And then last but not least, I'm going to take this 13mm socket. You could use a Phillips screwdriver if you wanted to. I'm just going to take and pull that in. Now we'll do the same thing on the other side. Now we got both of those little L brackets, those side brackets mounted. Make sure that you tighten up the screws. We've got our inverter mounted to the wall. The next step is wiring. So we're going to be wiring up our PV strings, our batteries, and our disconnect. I've got a critical load panel that I've already pre-wired. I'm using a 125 amp box. You could use a 60 amp, 100 amp, 125 amp box, maybe 200 amp. This is a pre-wired set of receptacles, and then I've got a PV isolator that I've already pre-wired. And you can see I've got 2 different strings coming in. If you don't know how to wire a PV disconnect like this, I will put a link to a video down in the description that teaches you how. To identify each string, that way I don't get them mixed up, I've got some black tape on this string here. Now moving over to our MPPTs, you can see that we've got 2 MPPTs and you have 2 inputs per MPPT. That means we could have up to 4 strings of PV. We're going to talk about the type of panels that I use that I got from Signature Solar and the types of batteries. First step, we're going to take out these knockouts and we're going to go ahead and wire in our PV strings. Looks like we got 5 larger knockouts and 4 smaller 3/4 knockout. I built a larger lean-to house all the panels that I'm connecting to this inverter. There's 16 panels total, and I'm dividing those panels in half, and I'll have 8 panels per string. So I'm wiring those panels in series. If you don't know how to wire panels, I will put a video down below. Go check out the description and click that link to learn how to actually wire those panels. These are serious PV panels, and I got these from Signature Solar. You can actually use my link that I'll put down in the description and I'll put right here, and you can get $50 off. You can also get $100 off of that specific inverter for the next 30 days using discount code Taddy100. But definitely act fast because that discount code will not last forever, but the link will. So let's take a look at the specifics of the solar panels. This used to hold 7 panels because I had those going directly into the EG4 24K mini split. You want to learn more about that mini split? I'll put a link to a video down below. But now I've got 16, so I'm very excited. Let's go check out the specifics. Here's the panels I'm using. They are Sirius 415 watt panels, and we can expect to have 31 volts times by 8. Since I'll have 8 in series, we're going to double the voltage. So if you multiply 31 times 8, we should expect to see around 250 volts per string. Before you wire up your strings, make sure that your isolator is in the off position. If it's in the off position, it'll look like this, and then you want to take and use your meter, put the dial on volts DC, right? We're going to go from 1 to 3. This is 1 string. We got 272 volts. Then if we go to the bottom to 2 and 4, 0, right? So if we go up here to 5 and 7, this is another string, 280 volts. Go down to 6 and 8, we got 0. So we are safe to wire up our PV to the MPPTs. Now that we've got our 2 strings wired in, I chose to use 1 string for the first MPPT and then the next string for the second MPPT. So I've got 1 string on +1, -1, the other string on +2, -2. Now we can turn on our PV isolator, PV disconnect, and the power switch for the inverter, and we should have a display. And then we should see our voltage for our strings. See, we've got 268 volts for string number 1, 274 volts for string number 2. Oh, there's a little yellow light there. That is cool. And I bet we're going to see some wattage even though it's a cloudy, rainy day. We will go over solar panels in just a moment. Next is battery wiring. So take a look. Yeah, you can see 50 starting, wattage is starting to come in. Let's go over batteries. This right here is a battery cabinet, and it actually comes with 4 casters. So I could have left this on the ground. With the wheels, you can move it around wherever you want. You can see that this comes with these battery cables so that you can parallel the batteries. You can see I've already got the negative connected and the positive connected. So these are in parallel. I've got 1 extra spot here, and these are their 100 amp hour EG4 48 volt batteries. And these are the rack mount type. Now I'm going to show you how to wire these up, but first I'm going to show you my other inverter, my 12K PV, and the battery choice there. Here's my 12K hybrid inverter that EG4 makes, and I matched it with one of their indoor wall mount batteries. Signature Solar carries EG4's indoor and outdoor wall mount batteries, and these are 14 kilowatt, 280 amp hour, and they're 48 volt batteries. You can match that 12,000 XP with one of these indoor or outdoor batteries that will mount directly underneath your inverter. Now I've wired up the batteries, and I'm going to show you the wiring. I've got 2 positive lugs here and then 2 negative lugs here. I'm only using one of the positive lugs and one of the negative lugs. and I used an Allen tool. I used an 8mm or a 5/16 Allen tool to loosen up the lug and to tighten it back down. So positive, negative coming into my battery cabinet, positive here, we've got this paralleled, and then negative here. So this is how I wired up those batteries. Now we can take our battery comm cable. You see we got the parallel cable. If we're putting batteries in parallel, maybe we're using some of those indoor or outdoor wall mount batteries. So I'm going to take and plug in my battery communication cable, which is my orange cable. I'm going to route it through the same hole and then route it in here. You want to make sure that from the battery comm port on the inverter that your communication cable goes to your first battery and it goes to the port labeled CAN. Then from the first battery to the second battery, we got the communication cable going from the battery comm up to the battery comm. Then, since I've got two batteries, I want to set the addresses. So I'm going to take for the first battery and I'm going to have the dip switch in the left position, which is off. The rest of them will be in the on position. And then up here, this is the second battery, so this is going to be address number 2, and I'm going to put the dip switch in the left position off, and then the rest of the dip switches in the on position. This is going to allow you to have good communication and you're addressing your batteries correctly. Now we're going to wire up from our inverter to our breaker box. So we've got a couple breakers. We're going to wire from our 100 amp breaker, and we're going to use minimum wire size of 3 AUG, and we're going to run 2 wires up to our box from here. We're going to run a wire from the neutral bar and the ground bar. For the neutral, I'm going to use number 6, the ground number 6. We've also got a breaker right here. I'm not going to utilize this, but I think this is very cool. What is this smart load breaker for? It's for, let's say we have our batteries fully charged. We have a bunch of excess power that's not being used. We can configure this inverter to be able to power a load like an EV car charger, like a well pump, maybe some water heater, anything that you may need to power when you have that excess power. So this breaker, this is really cool. This is a 63 amp breaker. If you're going to use this, use a minimum wire size of 6 AUG. As far as wire sizes, we'll go ahead and say the generator, you need to use a minimum wire size of number 4 AUG, and then grid, number 3 AUG. So make sure you know your minimum wire sizes. Check out your manual. It gives you all this information so you know what wire size to use for what breaker. We've got some 1.5 inch conduit, and we've got some number 3 wire right here. And I'm gonna run from this knockout to this knockout. We've got the box wired up. Let's go over the wiring. Then we're gonna move forward to commissioning and then testing. So you can see I've got my 2 3 AUG wires going to the load breaker, my 6 AUG going to the neutral, 6 AUG going to the ground. Then up here in the box, I got my 2 3 AUG hots, and then down here I've got my neutral and my ground on the same ground bar, and then I've grounded the box. Now one other thing that I did that I didn't show you is, you can see this bare copper wire here. Let me show you where this goes. Make sure you have a good ground. That bare copper ground wire goes outside and it's attached to the ground rod. You want to have a good ground, you want to drive a ground rod into the ground. Otherwise, you may have a warning on your inverter when you commission it. Now we're ready for commissioning. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on PV isolator, the PV disconnect, and the power switch. Then we should have a display. All the breakers are off. We should have a display. We do on our inverter. That's great. Now we're going to come back over here. We're going to turn on the first battery and the second battery. And then I'm going to turn on the battery breaker. Battery breaker. You can see this one's 54% and this one's 55%. I like the fact that when you get a battery from Signature Solar, EG4, they charge those batteries up halfway. That way you don't have a dead battery on arrival. That wouldn't be very good. Now we're going to turn on our battery breaker. And you can see up here, we've got our PV power going in. You see those arrows. And then we've got our power going out to our batteries. So looks like it's starting to charge. Now that we are starting to charge the batteries, that's great. But if you look back up here at our house, look at this. We've got 0, right? All right, let's go down here to our load breaker, turn on our load breaker, and then we should see some usable power up here. If you've got a yellow light right here and you've got a warning and you don't know what to do, don't worry. Call Signature Solar. They've got a great support team to be able to help you. And what they had me do was plug in this dongle, and then they had me connect the dongle to my Wi-Fi network here, and they were able to see my system and they were able to update the firmware for me. Now I've got a green light, no more warning, and you can see what's happening with my system. I've got a string here and it's 2000 watts, string here, 300 watts. I'm charging my batteries, 2000 watts, and then I've got usable power right here, 239 volts. We'll take our meter, turn the dial to volts AC. We'll take our leads, put it on the terminals. You can see 240 volts. So that means up here at my box, if I go to my two big lugs, look at that, 240 volts. So that means right now, my EG4 mini split, I can't turn it on. I have no power. But this wire right here goes to the outdoor unit. So now we should be able to turn on the mini split. You can see the display's lit up. Turn it on heat. Now I'm gonna run the mini split in the heat mode. Then I'm gonna turn on the breaker to my receptacles. Let's go ahead and plug in this fireplace heater. Turn it on heat. And let's see, after testing with the mini split running and the heater, what we can do with this. So take a look. 1400 watts right now. And we are still charging the battery, it looks like. Are we charging? Or we're going down a little bit? But yeah, we're still charging the battery and we're outputting wattage to operate this heater. We're gonna be able to operate my mini split, a heater if I want. I'm gonna be able to plug up my pumps for my aquaponics system. I'm gonna run my lights into this box for my building. So this is gonna be awesome. Now, some really cool things that I like about this 12,000 XP is you can actually put 6 of these together. So if you tie 6 of these together, you can have a total kilowatt of 72 kilowatts. That is amazing. This can be used to back up your home. This can be used if you've got an off-grid house or a cabin and you need a good inverter. It's actually a good size that can actually do 18,000 kilowatts of continuous surge capacity for 5 seconds, or it can do 15,000 watts at 10 seconds. These mechanical lugs can be removed. You may have a ring on the end of your wire and you may want to use that connector. So just take the screw out, remove the lug, and then use that screw to secure that ring. Down here, you notice this little green terminal block. This can be used to start and stop a generator for you. This can be used to maybe put an RSD, a rapid shutdown switch, maybe near the outside of your building where you can easily access it. Maybe if there's an emergency and there's some first responders that have to come to your residence, then they have that switch and they can hit it and that will shut everything down. EG4 mini split is running. Let's go check the wattage. Blowing out some warm air. Let's see how much power we're using. 3,300 watts. So right now we are powering not only the fireplace, but our mini split. Now we're gonna plug in a couple pumps. Plugging in my air pump and my water pump. All right, let's go see what the wattage is. That didn't add much wattage, but I still think it's really cool that I'm able to run all this. We're using about 3,000 watts. So pretty incredible. Check out the manual to know what generator size you need to use. There is a recommendation. I think you need to at least have a 6 kilowatt generator for this system. And if you want more information, Go check out the manual. You can actually download it at Signature Solar. Hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you learned something. I hope that if you need the 12,000 XP off-grid inverter, maybe a hybrid inverter, some solar panels, or a solar powered mini split, that you'll check out Signature Solar. Right now, for the next 30 days, you can use discount code Taddy100 and you can actually get $100 off of this specific inverter. You can also get $50 off by using my referral link. At checkout, you'll have $50 off on any of your solar supplies that you may need. So go check out signaturesolar.com. I'm putting the link right here, and then I'll also put the link down in the description. You've been watching Taddy Digest. I'm Tad, and I'll keep you cool if you let me.